Good morning, everybody. Good morning and welcome this morning to our long-awaited webinar to discuss issues of the school. My name is Happy Makumalo Ngidi. I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Proudly South African, and I'm going to be facilitating the discussion this morning. Thank you so much for joining us as we discuss procurement in schools, procurement in regards to school uniform and anything to do with what our learners need, not necessarily at the beginning of the year, but more so then, but even throughout the year. Those of you who are parents or guardians of learners, you will know that these little people lose their uniform. Somebody comes home, they don't have the socks, they've gone missing, or even the pair of shoes, or even a school bag for that matter. And they act so surprised that they really don't know how it disappeared. Forgetting that they left it at the soccer field or netball field or the swimming area. And they don't seem to understand that it is their responsibility to take care of their own stuff. But with that said, it gives me great pleasure to firstly acknowledge you online, wherever you may be connecting from, whether it's on the official site that we are hosting this webinar, or whether it's on any social media platform that we are utilizing this morning. We are a buy local campaign, Proudly South African. For the purpose of those of you who've just seen the logo, we are mandated to ensure that our country's localization agenda stands firm, that it always is highlighted through the efforts we make as Proudly South African, where we engage consumers, where we engage the private sector, the public sector, and anybody who cares about the economy of this country, touching, using all, or focusing rather, on all 26 designated areas. There's a lot we do as Proudly South African. If we are to unpack our work to you, it would take us the whole day. I'm not going to do justice to it, but on the line, there is a colleague of mine, Janine van Straten, who will take us through the work we do at Proudly South African and why this topic and this issue is of paramount interest and significance to us. And then what we will do, we will also hear from, we've heard from Janine, we will also hear from Mr. James Ndlebe, who is Chief Director, Planning and Implementation Support from the Department of Basic Education. Then we will be addressed by Ms. Karabo Mudau Muhlale, Principal Analyst, Advocacy Division at the Competition Commission. And then thereafter, we will hear from Mutupi Kopa, who is a proudly South African member, a calculator manufacturer, something that is such a need for the school environment. And then last but not least, we will hear from Huiseni Ndlalose, who is also a proudly SA member, a manufacturer of an educational board game from a company called Ibele Communication. I encourage you to send us questions on the chat box. I know on the program we've allocated a questions and answers time, but it doesn't stop you from sending questions on the chat box as well. I'll try and be on the lookout for it, and our PR team will be on the lookout for comments and questions that you may pose on social media platforms. Without further ado, we will kick off with the official formalities of this webinar. Just to outline quickly that the webinar seeks to or is designed to provide practical, accountable guidance on the procurement of school uniforms and learning materials, with the clear emphasis on local procurement, localization, and an increased private sector participation. You, as an attendee, will gain insights into local sourcing and how that can strengthen supply chains, support local manufacturers, and deliver long-term value for schools and communities. We are going to showcase perspectives from proudly South African member companies involved in the manufacturing of school uniforms and learning material, highlighting local production capacity, quality standards, and supply readiness. We're going to explore opportunities to strengthen collaboration between schools, education authorities, and local manufacturers in support of job creation, inclusive growth, and sustainable supply chain. And hopefully by so doing, we will tackle the issue of monopoly in the space, which remains an elephant in the room, where there's an unfair advantage to some who sell, who are in the business of selling these necessary school items, where the cake is big enough for everybody, but some of those guys prefer not to share the stake or the piece of the pie, rather. All right, with that said, I'm hoping that overview give you insight into what we're trying to achieve with this webinar. And now it gives me great pleasure to welcome a colleague of mine from proudly South African, Ms. Janine van Straten, who is Executive Manager for Strategy, Stakeholder Relations, and Legal. Welcome, Janine. Great to see you this morning. Please go for it.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Happy. Thank you for that welcome and for setting the tone for a lovely webinar. Thank you very much. I'm going to share my screen. Wonderful. And then presentation mode. Fantastic. Great. It gives me great pleasure to talk about Proudly South African and the work that we do, and really how it ties into the topic of today, which is what I'm glad to deliberate on. Procurement is what we're all about, promoting local procurement, and schools has always been for us one of the easiest or rather the most natural avenues to explore, because if you look at what a school contains, what we have to buy for the little ones, there's a lot. Sure. So to start off with Proudly South African, Happy really paved the way to say, to really discuss our mandates and to make mention of our mandate. But we really are driving local procurement, and we work with the public sector. So this is a space that they delve into, private sector, also a space that they delve into, and consumers. Of course, we are the ones buying for the little ones. Also, so it really is connected, very well connected with our mandate, where we tackle all three spheres of society, where we advocate and lobby for them to buy local. We're a not-for-profit organization, and we have all the NEDLAC social partners on our board, just to give you some insights into the makeup of our business. So we're well represented in terms of the social partners. So labor, business, civil society, and government are all on our board. So to keep us on the right track, and to make sure that that we fulfill the mandate that the very important mandate that we have as Proudly SA. So when the first point that we always make mention of is when we do go and visit the public sector and the private sector, as well as with consumers, we have to educate them on why it is that we want them to buy. So the importance of localization, and I think everybody on the call today, you are converted already, but it's to retain and create jobs. So that is around the education, why it's important to localize, why it's important to buy local. So it's to retain and create jobs, looking at skills development, economic development, looking at infrastructure development, improved living standards. Of course, if you have a job, your buying habits are extremely different as opposed to when you don't, when you are unemployed. So very important that that if we localize, we keep the spend within the country, and that really makes a difference. Looking also at empowerment on all fronts when you localize. So it really is a win-win for everybody. Our mandates, just to reiterate, so we advocate and we lobby and we educate the public sector, private sector, and consumers to buy local. However, we've introduced a fourth area of our business. It's all good and well to say, hey, buy local, but if you don't know where to source the local equivalents, it really does makes the ask very difficult to implement. So for us, in order to realize that vision, that dream, for the country to thrive in terms of localization, we have a membership base in place. And so we present our membership base absolutely in every activity that we do. That's our daily job, is to find opportunities for our member companies to thrive. So it's to promote the accessibility of locally made products and services. So before I move forward and tell you what access to market opportunities we have in place, I think it's important to take a step back. We have two members on that will present to you that are on the webinar, and they would have gone through the same vetting process. So for us to represent our members, to find opportunities for them, they have to be vetted. So we look at local content first and foremost. So you'll see our logo on the image on the left-hand side of your screen. So you see our logos there. We use you can use the national colors of our flag, for instance. So it's representative of local content, but also you'll see a big tick in the middle of our logo, and that represents quality for us. It's the mark of local content and quality whenever you see the logo. So how we vet for quality, we look at what the regulator of each industry requires for us to measure quality. So if you are manufacturing, say, a face mask for a hospital or surgical mask rather, then we must assess that you have a SAPRA license. And sometimes what the hospitals require are other marks of quality. It could be an EU mark or an FDA certificate, or it could be an ISO certificate. If we look at if you're manufacturing furniture on a great scale, you must have an ISO certificate. So it depends on each industry. So we'll take it on a case by case basis. So I hope for any company that's listening today that is not a member, I hope you take notes and really do consider joining us. I think let me just go back to local content, how we measure local content. So there are two ways to measure. If you're a manufacturer, we look at where do you obtain your raw materials from. If you have to bring them into the country because they're not available locally, then we look at the conversion or the assembling of the raw materials and or components into the final product. So we look at the value add because that's where the jobs are created. So we check to see that the assembling takes place locally if you had to bring in the components from abroad. If you're a services company, we do check in terms of other companies that you support. So the local content would be in your procurement practices. So we vet in accordance with that. We also check to see that you abide by fair labor practices. So we'll ask you for your HR policy or for a template of a contract of employment, just to double check that you are treating your employees fairly. I think that's very important. We do not want to be associated with any sweatshops. Very, very important. And then looking at environmental standards, you as a business, you also owe it to your environment, to your community, to do what you can to support the green economy, to take care of the environment that we live in. So you must adopt good environmental practices. And if you have a factory, for instance, you should have a waste management policy. So we'll check to see if you've got that in place when you do come on board. If you are situated in an office, perhaps you're a consultant or a lawyer, we don't, of course, you don't need a waste management policy, but what we do ask is that you adopt a practice that will reduce your carbon footprint. So we'll ask you to give us a pledge. And we'll also share with you examples of what you can do to promote safer environmental standards. So that vetting process, every company has to undergo that vetting process before they come on board as a member. And so that whenever we talk about you or you utilize our logo, we know, and everybody knows that you comply with our 4 key criteria. And I think that's what makes us and our members stand out. It's that trust that we instill because of this vetting process. Very, very important. There is a membership fee that must be paid to us, but I'll share with you what that is at the end, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. We have not increased membership fees for 10 years now, and it is very affordable, more so than 10 years earlier. So really, really, or more than 10 years earlier. So excited to show you that. So I don't want you to just leave us just yet, but do stay on, and then we'll share with you what the membership fee structure is all about. So looking at the business support ecosystem, so you'll see we've got phenomenal subject matter experts on the call today. We are not those. So for us, we really thrive and we really focus on market access opportunities for our member companies. And then we always knock on doors of the experts. So we really connected with a lot of associations, a lot of stakeholders, a lot of agencies, organizations that can help our member companies. And we then facilitate these types of webinars, or we facilitate one-on-one introductions, or we host them at our Business Solutions Hub, which is at our event next week, Monday and Tuesday, at the Sandton Convention Center. We do urge you to come through and visit us. If you're Gauteng-based, please do come through. But you'll see what we're all about in person on Monday, Tuesday, if you do have an opportunity to attend. So we're about market access. So in our Business Solutions Hub, we'll then present some of our colleagues that can help businesses and uplift businesses, but we also do these introductions and webinars. With regards to market access, that is really at the helm of where we stand. We link into a lot of programs that government does, as well as what the private sector is doing. And that's predominantly my job at Proudly SA, is to then uplift our membership base through the connection of other localization programs. So not only to amplify our own, but also then to link into others so that we always keep it in the family. And I think collaboration is key. You can't do this on your own. And I think this slide showcases that we can really, if we work together, we can achieve phenomenal things. So looking at our market access opportunities in the private sector. So keep in mind that the beneficiaries of all of these programs that we present here today is our membership base. They are our members. So when we go to the private sector, we ask #will you commit? That was a beautiful campaign we did some years back, but we since this campaign has been launched, we have given this campaign really great teeth. So it gives me great pleasure to tell you what it has developed into. So we ask of the corporates. So remember, this is the private sector work that we're doing. We ask of corporates to introduce practices and policies to really favor local manufacturers. So we ask them to look at what their supply chain is all about, and wherever they say support other companies outside the borders of our country, that they really look at our base, see if they can import replace, if you will, and that's really key to how a corporate can make a big difference. But also then, of course, if you are bringing in raw material or components, have you ever thought to ask whether these are available locally? That's also what we ask. And of course, we can present our membership base when we do that. And then for retailers, physical and online, we ask for shelf space, more shelf space, please. And there are some retailers that are doing phenomenal work. We've had success as Proudly SA at the clothing, textile, footwear, and leather, the footwear and leather industry. And that's also why we thrive. We've also got our local fashion police, which is really testament to the work that we have done as Proud SA in terms of the clothing, textile, footwear, and leather space. So for retailers, we ask that they award more shelf space to local manufacturers. And you'll see that there's a lot of noise. When I say noise, there's a lot of local, there's flags and there's Proudly SA logos when you go into the clothing retailers. But for FMCG, we are knocking hard on those doors, and some have opened for us, so we're quite excited to share more when the time is right with our member companies. We are looking and targeting the FMCG retailers because that buying power is phenomenal. And with the retailers, of course, we haven't forgotten about the wholesalers as well as the distributors. So that's also one commitment we ask of the private sector. Then, of course, if they have an ESG program, that they keep it within the family. They should. We're asking corporates, if you are supporting other companies, include local content provisions in your contracts with them so that they keep the spend within the borders. And we ask the same of government, by the way. So we ask the same that they also implement local content provisions in their supply chain policies so that they can be audited in accordance to that. We've also asked for retailers, by the way. We said in your buyers' KPIs, please put a local content stipulation there so that they can be rewarded accordingly. I think that's very, very important. And then, of course, there's other ways for corporates to also commit. They could say expand on their product offering, on their service offering. They could also build more factories, also contract manufacture, or make these facilities available to other entrepreneurs, so that we keep those factories alive, kicking. Looking at what other the other, just generally speaking, the other commitments and areas of our business that we have knocked on doors with banks, schools, hospitals, autos, retailers, etc., where we've asked either at association level or industry level, but also we've asked individual corporates to make these localization commitments. So we've really have had great success. And I must share with you that since 2018, we've had about 95 commitments from corporates. And the spend there is about 6 to 8 billion rand per annum. I was thinking for hospitals alone, it's 3 to 4 billion. And those are the independent hospitals. So it really is a phenomenal spend. So when we ask for these commitments to be made, of course, we introduce the corporates to our membership base. And the way we do that is really, it's a digital platform that we've got in place. It's called the Market Access Platform. So we have been making a lot of noise about this platform. We are so excited to be launching the AI version so that we can really link into more procurement programs that are in place with other corporates. But it is just to make the system really world-class, make sure it runs fantastically, and it's impactful, because it's all about impact for us. So this is a B2B matchmaking tool. This is Proudly South African's own. So in the ins and outs of it, we list you on as a member. We call you a supplier. So you're a member of Proudly SA, and then you share the makeup of your business. You tell us what you're all about, where are you situated, the size of the business. You also share with us your scorecard, and very, very importantly, looking at ownership. If you're youth, if you're Black-owned business, women-owned business, youth-owned business, disabled, military, veterans, rural, if you come from if you're doing business in a rural area, etc. Because we are very much aware that the private sector have their own preferential procurement targets, and we don't want our membership base to miss out on that. Hence, us adapting this platform to then heed that call. But really, when we do finalize your entry on MAP, we then target and go to the buyers that are listed. So the buyers, we have over 230 buyers listed on the Market Access Platform, but we want to reach the thousands. We want to really make sure that every JSE listed business, every retailer, every corporate, every buyer is on the Market Access Platform, so that they can meet our member companies and do business with them. It works like a Tinder. So I think I'm okay to say that, because whenever I've met with very high profile colleagues outside of our organization, that's what they tell me. So our members are listed on the supplier side. We then match them up with corporate. So the corporate would put a tender opportunity out. That tender will automatically go to our members operating in that specific space. And then if they are interested to bid for that tender, they will then make connection with the buyer, because we don't want our members' database to go everywhere. It's got to be very, very intentional in terms of how we share that information. I think that was really important to share that with you. And then other work that we're doing in the private sector. So yes, we've got our Buy Local Summit and Expo. That's the event taking place on Monday and Tuesday. I'm sure Happy might mention a few more details about that. Looking also at our e-commerce strategy. Very new for us. We've knocked on the doors of the big guys, the Take-A-Lots, the macro marketplaces, etc. And we've taken our members there, and we've always negotiated a free listing fee, whether it be indefinitely or for part of the time. And then we've asked these platforms, please allow our members to utilize the logo and or proudly SA phrase when they do list. And then when they've got enough companies listed on that platform, that they then bring about a Mzansi page. And you will see on each and every platform, it's work that we've done blood, sweat, and tears since 2020, that there are local pages on all of these sites. So we really are thrilled with that work. And it makes our jobs easy to say, hey, you can, when we do a consumer education campaign, to say, hey, you can find our members' product on any of these partner sites. And then I'm also going to share with you, we have our own online store, but I'll share more with you on the next slide. We also have our local wine expo. We buy space for members at other exhibitions. We also have the commitments and matchmaking that takes place at our flagship events, and our flagship events being the Buy Local Summit Expo, the local wine expo, and we have the local fashion police. Although we don't necessarily do a matchmaking at any of those events, but that most certainly takes place through the market access platform, which is listed here. And of course, we are the organization with the most amazing database of local products and services. So anybody, and we've facilitated a lot of one-on-one introductions whereby the corporates can come to us and say, we want to buy local, and please introduce us to your members operating that space. So we've done a lot of that work. Our public sector procurement, so we're also in the space, and I'm going to mention that very fast. We do monitor tenders as proudly as say. We've got a beautiful AI now that's allowing our members to have their own dashboard. So we'll be launching this next month. They've got their own dashboard, and then they can then input keywords that are of interest to them, so that whenever government puts a tender out, they'll get a notification on their own dashboard, and then they can do business with government. But we're also keeping an eye out on that. We can see, hey, City of Joburg, we can go knocking and say, see, you've got a tender out for furniture. Please look at your policies, include local content provisions. The same with schools, the same with correctional services, etc., so that we can monitor what government is doing to really localize. And with the tender monitoring function that we do have, so we're connected to over 1,000 sites, we have now integrated our membership base with the CSD, but it's dependent on whether our member wants to integrate with the CSD, so that if they're not yet on the central supplier database, which is National Treasury's database for government to do business, or for you to do business with government, if you're not on it, you can be by virtue of your membership. You should just let us know, and communication will be shared with our members following our event next week. So the CSD integration is there, but we've also gone an extra mile. So all this lobbying work that we're doing, when we're knocking on doors, asking local content provisions to be included in policies, we also then have asked National Treasury to allow our members to utilize Proudly SA identifier on the CSD, so that anybody buying for government where they have to buy local, our membership base will stand out. And then that's really the essence of the work that we've done. The work we're doing in the consumer space, so we've got the online store partnerships. We have a retailer program, I've made mention of that connects to the commitments. We have third-party expos, social media campaigns. The PR arm of the business is very strong. We also have other areas of observation, festive seasons, the Mother's Day, Father's Day, Valentine's Day, where we urge consumers to buy local. Black Friday, local fashion police, I've made mention, and then also the digital work that we're doing via the website. These are some of our partners, as Proudly SA, that we connect with online, the e-commerce partners, but importantly, we have our own. So we've got in the region of about 500 members listed. So we're appealing to all of our members to come through, list on Shop Proudly SA. But we also have in the region of almost 2,500 products, over 230 services members also listed. So we are expanding on the site, but this site is really for us a game changer as an organization, and we hope for our membership base too. So it allows you to, we do business B2B transactions, allows our members to do B2C transactions, but we're also delving into the export space for the first time ever, but only through Shop Proudly SA and with our partners. So remember, I told you where we are in the greater scheme of things. We market access focused. So we do count on the DTIC and the export desk to help us when we do go and see how we can take members abroad through Shop Proudly SA. So we're quite excited about that development. And then I'm going to, that was in a nutshell what we're all about. After this, I'll show you one more slide. And this is our ad. We're very, very proud of our ad. And it links in so nicely with this topic of today, because if you do the right thing now, if you buy intentionally local, there is a legacy that you leave behind. And the legacy, who's going to benefit from that legacy? It's the next generation. So I think it's important if we start with school uniforms, and I'm appealing to the buyers, schools, and I'm appealing to whether it be government schools or it could be those in the private sector, but also the consumer. You as a parent can make a big difference by already instilling that education in your child. And then when you buy uniforms, when you buy stationery, lunch boxes, school bags, which our members are making, calculators, board games, educational material, you know to choose local, and that's where we should start. I'm going to play the ad for you and then share with you one more slide, and I think you'll be pleasantly surprised.
There's a voice that is calling, loudly calling, day by day, the voice of the future.
When I started my business, all I wanted was to create jobs and a legacy for the next generation, because I see opportunity when others see impossibility.
It all started with a thought and then a seed in the garden, which grew into my very own farm that feeds the whole nation daily.
Cotton, silk, and a little bit of treasure, I create masterpieces that give South Africans an identity, comfort, and confidence, because when you look good, you feel good.
From the factory workers to the warehouse and then over the seas, I want to show the world what proudly South African looks like. It all started with just some ink on paper and inspiration to bring people together. With my furniture, I now help create spaces that are beautiful, comfortable, and authentic to human light and connection.
I've always been driven by curiosity. It fueled my dreams to create automobiles that accelerate our nation into greater possibilities and the beauty of the unknown.
I was born into a rainbow nation. My life has been full of colors and mixed flavors. And when I started my bakery, I wanted to share the joy with the world and with South Africans in particular.
All I ever dreamt of was to be a bird and fly high. And now I have the wings to help others fulfill their dreams of flying high too.
But it can only be a dream until you make it a reality. All they need is your faith, your trust, your loyalty, your appreciation.
And most importantly,
Your support.
because supporting local businesses
Helps create jobs
And secures our future.
South Africa, their future is in your hands. So what are you going to do about it? Be proudly South African. Buy local to create jobs. There's a
So if I think that speaks louder than words. I could have said nothing and just played that video today. But I just want to share our fee structure with you. So if you're turning over 5 million rand or less, your membership fee per annum is 500 rand. So I really want to appeal to everybody on the call today. Consider membership with Proudly SA. Join the movement, and together we can really, really make a difference. Thank you, Happy, for the opportunity.
Thank you, Janine. Apologies, I was technologically challenged just now, trying to unmute and get my camera back on. Thank you so much for giving us that comprehensive overview and background into the work that we do as Proudly South African. I'm hoping that all our attendees have a better appreciation and understanding of why we exist as Proudly South African. I'm checking on the chat box. There is no question as yet. And I'm just going to remind PR on the line to have a look at what else we have going on out there. Thank you so much, Janine. We appreciate your input. Thank you. All right, thank you, everybody. I'm hoping that that was great information that Janine shared with you this morning, and that you'll be able to utilize in your respective spaces as you navigate the world of procurement from a school-related perspective. And now, without further ado, we will, gives me great pleasure to invite Mr. James Ndlebe, who is Chief Director, Planning and Implementation Support from the Department of Basic Education. Mr. Ndlebe, the platform is yours. Thank you so much for joining us this morning.
Thank you very much, and we appreciate the invite. Just trying to show my face so that you don't think you are being addressed by AI. It's not showing. There's a boycott there. The system doesn't want me to show my face.
Yeah, it doesn't, but it's okay, sir. Don't worry. You are audible. We can hear you. I'm going to request that Mr. Mbuyiseni Mdlalose switches off your camera, please. That's the footage we can see, and that'll potentially cause confusion. And people will think you are the one who's doing a presentation. Mr. Mdlalose, please switch off your camera. Thank you, Mr. Ndlebe. You can go ahead.
Thank you very much. I hope the presentation is visible to everyone.
Yes, it is. It's on the screen.
Unlike Janine, we are not in business. Our mandate is to educate the nation. So my presentation will be really focusing on why we really need you as business, and why we really need the Competition Commission and all those organizations like NEDLAC and the various stakeholders. We want to just show you the importance of why we really do this. The question being, do we really need school uniform? Why can't we just get rid of school uniform? So you see it as a business to sell the school uniform, but for us, it's far more than that. If we didn't have uniform, these are the consequences that we're going to suffer. There are those who argue that we really don't need this. And their reasoning is that if you remove school uniform, learners can foster an environment and celebrate individuality, creativity, and self-expression, and that gives them personal growth. They say the absence of uniform brings in freedom of expression and creativity. And learners tend to develop self-confidence and identity. And it promotes diversity because you begin to have various learners wearing different attires, expressing their cultural diversity and all that. And then it creates a welcoming environment where learners from diverse backgrounds feel valued and respected. So I'm just giving this other side of people who believe we don't need school uniform. But from our side, as an education department, we believe that uniform promotes school safety, it improves discipline, it enhances learning environment, and it will make and assist in us identifying authorized learners in a school. And it helps parents to resist the pressure that leads to children making unnecessary demands for a particular designer clothing. Where there is school uniform, theft, and particularly of clothes, jewelry, and expensive footwear, then it's minimized because everybody wears the same. Violence is minimized in that environment, and learners tend to focus more on the schoolwork. I'm breaking this down further to say if there is school uniform, children are less distracted in the classroom. Because without a standardized dress code, learners wear clothing that is deemed inappropriate or disruptive to the learning environment. This could include offensive graphic slogans, clothing that promotes controversial ideologies and all that. Then that takes away the focus from teaching and learning. Children then get exposed to peer group pressure and bullying. They face this pressure because of fashion trends and style, and those who do not comply with the new trends tend to be bullied and get excluded. So uniform just bring that uniformity, as to say. Uniform plays a very important role on socio-economic disparities and discrimination. In the absence of school uniform, then these discrepancies become so obvious and on your face because families may struggle to afford trends or expensive clothing. Uniform does play a very important role on academic achievement because learners tend to focus on their test, and the only comparison is about performance and not what one is wearing, which tends to distract. When children look alike and they look the same and they dress the same, it does bring a sense of pride and a sense of belonging. And the discipline tends to change in that environment for the better. So our job is to teach. That's what we do. It's education. But we can't do this alone. That's why we need all the people in this platform, the Proudly South African, the Competition Commission, so that we can focus on what we do best to educate. And you help us create that teaching and learning conducive environment, because we are saying uniform brings that conducive learning environment, which we may not be able to create on our own. So we don't want you to see this as a business. We want you to understand the important role that you play in creating that conducive environment. So if you have a buy-in and you understand the value of the work that you do, because it contributes to this value, you will then have this moral ground to do what you do with confidence, knowing very well that you are contributing to the things that I've said, bringing that conviviality, bringing that environment that is of a high disciplined nature, where children are focusing on learning, so that when you sell that shirt, you know the importance of that shirt in the stage of teaching and learning. So that's why I'm taking you through why this is important. So we believe what needs to be done is that we should all make sure that uniform doesn't become an impediment to access to education, and try and remove all these barriers that prevent access to buying cheap and affordable uniform and even books and material like the calculators that members also produce. The cost of uniform should not constitute an unaffordable financial burden on parents. You know, this becomes worse in January. It's always a shock to parents year in and year out that when they go and buy that blazer, they can't believe the price tag in that. So uniform is not supposed to be like that. We need to start reducing the cost of uniform, especially for the poor, such that the obtaining of a uniform does not deter attendance or participation in school program. So that's a role that you need to play. And what role are we going to play? We say our mandate is to educate. And we'll continue to support the role that is played by the Competition Commission, the role that is played by Proudly South African and other businesses that want to contribute in this project that we're doing. We will continue to open our schools so that you can have access at any time. We will make our school governing bodies available, that they understand this competition and how it works, where to buy, and how to work together with all of us. We'll continue to make all our officials of the department available. We have already signed an agreement with the Competition Commission, and that gives you permission at any time, at any day, that you just give us a call and say, we want to be in that school, and the gates are going to be open. Because we believe it is through your role that these things are going to be, the prices are going to be reduced. So we really want the Competition Commission to level this playing field so that there is equality in the purchases of uniform. My criticism at the moment is that there are laws in this country. People have been given sufficient time. They have been educated about these competitions and business. But when it comes to implementation, we then become too apologetic and will never be able to handle these problems. And as long as we are apologetic, I don't know how many years we have been educating schools about uncompetitive behavior, how we have been educating schools on where to get uniform cheaper and what type of uniform that they can utilize, that they don't have to go beyond overboard and buy expensive, have a simple uniform, not multiple uniforms and so on. So these are the preaching that we've always been doing. But unless we start seeing some action that the Competition Commission is capable of imposing, we will continue singing the same song. So in closing, we just want to say we really appreciate the relationship between Proudly South African, the Competition Commission, business as a whole, and the different stakeholders that can make us achieve these objectives of making education materials affordable for all, and then we'll have a better country in that fashion. May I thank you, Program Director. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mr. Ntlebe. Well spoken, well articulated. Thank you so much for reminding us of the work that the Department of Basic Education does around this issue for the benefit of our communities, our school-going children, our economy, and our economy, most importantly, as a whole. Thank you so much. Much appreciated. I'm checking the questions on the chat box. Okay, somebody's just asking if it is possible for us to share the presentations afterwards. I'm sure it is. I put out a kind request to the colleagues on the line, if you wouldn't mind to please share your presentation with Lesego, so we can share with those who are asking on the line. Thank you so much. If that's permissible, that would be so great. Thank you. Without further ado, may I please now remind you to send your questions. Let's keep the discussion going on social media platforms. And I'm hoping you're paying attention and listening to all the great information you're getting from this platform. And now from the Competition Commission, Ms. Karabo Mudau Muhlala, who is Principal Analyst, Advocacy Division. Ma'am, the platform is yours. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, and good morning to everyone that is on the platform. Thank you very much to Proudly SA for inviting the Competition Commission. So maybe just to go back in terms of the Commission's role in respect of school uniform and how is it that we became involved in this space. So as a regulator, we regulate for competition in any market, right? And so we would have gotten into this market or started getting involved in this market as early as around 2010, when the Commission started receiving quite a number of complaints around school uniform. And the complaints were on one side from parents that were complaining about the prices of school uniform. They were raising issues around the fact that they were being forced by schools to procure school uniform from specific suppliers or from the school directly. And as a result, they were not able to exercise their choice as parents. And the other side of the complaint really came in from small suppliers who were saying that they were unable to get through to schools to try and supply those schools with school uniform because schools had concluded what we termed exclusive and long-term agreements with specific suppliers, which meant that the school could not appoint any other supplier besides the one that they had at the time to come in and provide school uniform. And so what we found was that a lot of SMMEs in the space that were trying to enter the space, that were trying to approach schools, were unable to do so because of these exclusive agreements. And so essentially that is how the Competition Commission started intervening in the market for school uniform. And so over the years, we've undertaken quite a number of initiatives. We have taken the enforcement route, and by enforcement, we mean having investigated some of the schools for particular conduct. We've also taken an advocacy route as well. And advocacy really, the purpose of the advocacy initiative was entailed at trying to raise awareness, particularly among schools, around pro-competitive principles and pro-competitive procurement practices that they needed to apply when identifying school uniform suppliers, bringing on new suppliers, etc. And so over the years, these are some of the initiatives that we have taken forward. So following the investigation of the Commission, I think it was around 2016, 2017, if I'm not mistaken, that's when we launched the first investigation into a number of schools as well as school uniform suppliers. The Commission then concluded settlement agreements with some of the schools as well as the school uniform suppliers. And I think what is important to highlight here is that the Commission has always had a stance that they are not interested in prosecuting schools, not because they are not able to, but because we are of the view that schools and school management, the teachers, the principals, need to be focusing on schools and providing education, right? And not be involved in the litigious processes that are involved in attending a prosecutorial trial, for example. And so what we then did at the time was to settle with the schools and the suppliers, and the purpose of the settlement was really to try and change their behavior so that they could adopt more pro-competitive principles, adopt a more pro-competitive approach in the procurement processes, in the identification of suppliers, and so on, so that the behavior over time changes, and that the market over time is open for SMMEs that are trying to enter the space. So in terms of the settlement agreements with the schools, specifically, our guidelines included, for example, schools ensuring that school uniform is as generic as possible. And essentially, this means that we know that a number of schools will have a school blazer, they'll have a jersey, they'll have a tie, they'll have a shirt, all of which will carry the school badge. And essentially what we're saying is it possible, for example, to have a shirt that does not have a school badge, to have a gray jersey that a parent can go and procure from any retailer, right, at which they can afford, right, without necessarily having to purchase it from the school uniform supply only because it has a school badge. So to the extent possible, we have asked and requested through the guidelines that schools need to ensure that the uniform is as generic as possible, and that they reduce the number of uniform items that are unique. So reduce the number of uniform items that have a school badge on it, right? So that you can allow parents, again, the opportunity to go and procure uniform items, that do not have the badge, like plain white shirts, plain gray shirts, plain blue shirts, from retailers at which they can afford. In line with reducing the number of unique items as well, one of the recommendations for schools was to say, if you are going to have school uniform for girls, right, that they wear in summer, instead of making them wear something else in winter, why is it that they cannot wear the same uniform throughout the year and perhaps just change the socks that they wear, right? So maybe introduce leggings in winter, right, so that it can keep them warm, and then maybe have, excuse me. My apologies, colleagues. Sorry about that. So again, so I was still speaking around the issue of limiting the number of school uniform items. So I was on the example of school uniform for girls, right? So introducing leggings for winter, and then maybe having shorter socks for summer. Alternatively, as well, when you look at sporting codes, right? Different schools have different sporting uniforms for the different sporting codes. And if schools can reduce, for example, those numbers of sporting uniform items, that could also make a huge difference, right, for parents who consistently are complaining about the high cost of school uniforms. So if you are going to have for example, a shorts and a shirt that learners can wear for 3 or 4 types of sports, then again, that is one of the things that the guideline prescribes. I'm just going to quickly move on. Another thing that the guidelines set out is that schools must appoint more than one supplier. So a lot of the complaints that were received from parents was the fact that they were being forced by the schools to procure uniform from one supplier, right? This is because the school only had one supplier, right? And one of the issues that we picked up was that this supplier that was there with the school was not appointed one through a competitive process, but also we also found that some of the suppliers that were on the school's database had been there for many years, over 50 years in some instances, and there was no contract in place, right? So there was nothing that could say, you know what, this contract came to start at this period of time, this contract is ending in this period of time, these are the terms of the contract, etc. We found that a lot of the relationships between the suppliers and the school were historic, right? And that it was because the supplier perhaps has had a relationship with previous headmasters of a particular school for many, many years. And so they have kept the same supplier even over the years, and even after they had changed the school principal. So it's one change, ensuring that schools appoint more than one supplier. It's also ensuring that schools conduct a competitive tender process when appointing suppliers. Like I said, there when we did our investigation, there was just no trace of how schools appointed the supplier. There was no process that was followed. This was a supplier who had been carried on the system for years and years and years because of prior relations that they had with the schools. And so one of our prescriptions in the guidelines is that schools must ensure that they undertake a competitive process, that they open up the market so that all potential suppliers that want to be able to participate are able to tender for the bid that the school is having, so that they can also present and at the schools with the uniform items that they have, and so that they can show the school the quality of uniform items that they have. And so those are some of our the items in our guidelines. Another one is also what we found, I have mentioned this earlier, is that schools, we found that schools actually had these relationships with school uniform suppliers, for some of them existing beyond 50 years, right? And so what we have prescribed as part of the guidelines is to say that when schools enter into contracts with school uniform suppliers, they need to ensure that those contracts are only applicable or only for the existence for about 3 to 5 years, right? And that after every 3 to 5 years, those contracts need to be reviewed. The supplier needs to be reviewed, and the entire process of procuring again needs to be undertaken, right? So we are saying that you know what, to the extent that you need to have 2 suppliers, right, or 1 supplier, still ensure that after 3 to 4 years, 3 to 5 years, for example, you are reviewing the process, you are reviewing the performance and the quality of your supplier, or that you are opening up the market again so that new suppliers can come on board. So essentially, those are the guidelines that we've provided to the schools. I mentioned as well that the Commission had also actually entered into settlement agreements with some of the big suppliers that they were investigating at the time, right? And one of the issues that we had found is that the schools where there were contractual agreements in place, we found that the supplier was appointed contractually as the sole supplier of the school. And essentially what that meant is that the school could not appoint any other supplier to supply them with school uniform. And so going forward, we have said that suppliers should not, and they need to be prevented from concluding such agreements with schools, or having clauses within the contracts that they have with schools that prevent schools from appointing alternative or other suppliers, and essentially appointing one supplier as the sole supplier of school uniform. Once again, suppliers need to ensure, and this is the responsibility of suppliers, I must add, that they need to ensure that whatever contract they conclude with a school has a limit and an end period, a termination date. And again, these contracts are not allowed to be more than 3 to 5 years. So similar to the schools, contracts, clauses within the supplier contracts must stipulate that the clause needs to end after a period of 5 years, and that it can be reviewed thereafter. Another element of the settlement agreements that we concluded with the suppliers was that they should not, and this is prohibited in terms of the Competition Act, by the way, they should not enter into evergreen agreements with schools. And by evergreen, we mean that it's a contract that does not have an end period, right? Because of course, what that means is that other suppliers then are foreclosed from entering the market. So essentially, these are the guidelines. So these are the settlement agreements. Let me say that first. These are the settlement terms that we concluded with the schools and with the suppliers. But what we've done with the terms of those settlement agreements is that we've then translated them into a guideline, and the guideline essentially seeks to guide schools in terms of how they need to go about when setting up their procurement processes, to ensure that they take and consider the competition principles, and ensure that in appointing suppliers, they are aligned to the principles of competition, and that they align to competition laws, essentially. So essentially those guidelines are meant to guide schools, but they're also meant to guide parents, so that parents understand what are their rights insofar as it relates to school uniform, but also what is it that schools are allowed and not allowed to do, because parents are the ones that engage with the schools on a day-to-day basis. They're the ones that engage with suppliers on a day-to-day basis. And so they are the people that if there is any harm, if there's any anti-competitive practice that happens at the end of the day, are most harmed as the consumers of school uniform. And so it is important that they understand their responsibility. They understand what is wrong and what is right, so that they too are able to come and lodge complaints with the Competition Commission should they feel that they are harmed. Colleagues, I'm going to leave it at that. These guidelines are available on the Competition Commission's website, and we are working together with the Department of Basic Education as well to roll out more where there is a need. But yes, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much, Karabo. Much, much appreciated your contribution. And from what you've said in your closing remarks just now, proves that when we collaborate as entities with a similar agenda, the impact is bigger. I'm glad to hear you mention that, mentioning the fact that, you will facilitate or rather engage the Department of Basic Education to find solutions around the technicalities and challenges that this sector faces. And like I said when in my opening remarks, that it's not necessarily at the beginning of the curriculum year, but it is in fact in between throughout the year, where these discussions have to be held as a constant reminder on options which parents can utilize to procure whatever it is that they need for their school-going children. Thank you so much, Karabo. Your contribution is much appreciated. I'm checking out the chat line. I see nothing new. And so with that said, we are going to continue with our program. And next in line is Mutupi Khopa, a member of Proudly South African, who's a manufacturer of calculators in South Africa from a company called Geleza Tech. Geleza, in typical South African lingo, if my memory serves me right, I'm hoping that I'm correct, but Geleza means go to school. It's one of those South African jargons that most of us are exposed to. Am I correct, Mutupi?
Yes, indeed, you are very correct. Thank you.
Oh, fantastic. Please go ahead with your presentation. Thank you.
Permission to share. All right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Mutupi Khopa, and I'm the founder of Geleza Tech, a company that started in 2021. And this was with me traveling around schools as a mathematician, training a lot of mathematics teachers around the country, and realizing there's a big problem when it comes to calculators. And I got to a grade 10 class in Beggarsford because we were helping that district that's the worst performing, just really helping them to turn around mathematics results. And I realized that almost all the learners in the class did not have calculators. So that then just led to a company that we today call Geleza Tech, and I'm going to take you through it a little bit. So the very first thing to note is that we also, we eventually also started providing online lessons, partnering through with Telkom. on this. So we help a lot of learners. Last year, we had over 500 learners that we were helping. These are some of the products. I don't want it to be based on this. I want it to be based on the text of what today's lesson so representation is about. So these are some of the things that we do. And quite importantly, I mean, we are much known for our calculators. Once we've launched, we've been training every January. You would probably see a Geleza calculator doing the rounds, whether on social media, TV, or radio. So that is us. Having said that, though, there's many challenges within the sector, especially when it comes to procurement, that I would love to share and I'd love to get through for this presentation. Before I start, allow me to just share this with you. That is exactly where I am at the moment, where almost 90% of the learners do not have a calculator in grade 9 class. But at the same time, we want them to pass mathematics, which then begs the question, are we really serious about getting the mathematics, for our learners to pass mathematics? And you obviously know the stats as we speak. And as we look at the stats in grade 9, I'd even put it at less than 5% who pass mathematics in the country. So you already seeing what the challenges are. I mean, how are you even gonna do, mathematics without a calculator? Allow me to just pass this. It's a bit of a struggle. Okay, there you go. So we are looking at schools that are nationally in quintile 1 to 3, meaning we are looking at 13,500 schools that are in quintile 1 to 3, meaning these are schools that cannot afford. They are at the very bare minimum of what the income level in South Africa. They are at the very rock bottom. And we also find out that 60% of these learners in the country are in quintile 1 to 3, meaning they cannot afford. These are non-fee paying schools. The point that you get out of this is that over 13,000 schools in South Africa fall within quintile 1 to 3, meaning a lot of these learners are coming from communities where they cannot afford. And therefore, it poses the risk when it comes to accessibility, fair competition, and on locally manufactured learning material. And also, if you really look at number of South African on social grants, you realize that we're sitting on 26,500,000, about that learners, people on social grants. What that means is that we are sitting with about 45% of South Africans in the population who cannot afford. And when you look at our education levels and you're realizing that just about 3 to 4% graduate with a university degree in their schooling lives. So that also poses a risk because whatever job opportunities that they're gonna get, it's mostly going to be very low paying jobs that they eventually are gonna end up getting. I mean, look at that figure. You're looking at almost 70% of people who are either at matric or less. If you look at the breakdown further on who's getting the grants, and this is how it looks like. And we have a new entrant who's getting 370 on the grant, 8 to 9 million that have just entered the grant space. So what is the point here? If almost half of the population relies on the grants, then affordability in education is critical. When schools prescribe specific brands of stationery or calculators, they unintentionally exclude millions of families who simply cannot afford them. And this is the point that I find in every school that I go, in every community that I go. And I dare say there's a calculator crisis in the country. The next thing closer to a calculator crisis in the country is a stationery crisis, followed by the school uniform crisis. So this is what we are finding ourselves, where schools actually prescribe on which brands to get and eventually pushing them out of the affordability bracket. Okay, so I'm not gonna sit much on this, but lastly, just on the economic side, you see that 7 million of the taxpayers in South Africa are funding 60 million people. So this is a crisis that we are faced with. And it may not play itself in Joburg, but it's definitely going to play itself in communities where there's need, in our rural communities, in our rural schools, in our township schools. It's playing itself on a very, very large scale. If we want to reduce unemployment and dependency, we must support local industries. Every calculator manufactured, every school uniform produced, and every learning tool built locally creates jobs and expands the tax base. So if you look at the stationery in South Africa, this I took from one of the schools, Carlton VOS. If you look at it, the first picture on the left looks good because there is almost no prescription there. But if you look at the right, you start to see things. I mean, look at that. You get a prescription on which calculator to get. You get a prescription on which glue to get. You get a prescription on which pocket file to get. And I then looked at the Royal Schools. By the way, these are taken from their school websites. If you look at the Royal Schools, if you go into it, when you're looking at it, this is great, nice and clean, no prescription. When you go at the bottom under Zulu, they start saying A4 bank tax file. Why do we need a bank tax file? We just need a file. So lastly, I looked into the Bedford View Primary, and you can see prescription from the top to the bottom. You've got a Gloy glue stick that they want. Why do they need Gloy? They need an outline, they need Bic, they need a Stedler eraser, they need a Pilot, they need a Croxley, they need a Kleenex tissue, not a tissue, a Kleenex tissue. And these are some of the prescription issues that we are confronted with in our education system. And I'm happy that the Competition Commission is here because I feel a very big, larger role needs to be done here to transform this. So what am I saying? I'm saying we need to look at local procurement that drives access, okay? And it is important that when we do that, we look at not prescribing the brands. The focus should be on the outcomes, the functionality, not the brand loyalty. If schools, as an example, want a calculator, they should be saying, we want a certain number of functions. We want a 252 functions calculator, not a specific brand of a calculator. Because the moment they do that is that they unintentionally exclude a lot of learners who cannot afford to buy other brands. Okay, the impact on this, if we do it right, is that it increases the equity in education, it expands the market access for multiple local suppliers, it prevents monopolistic supply practices that you are finding in South Africa that have been prevalent for many, many years. And I'm happy the Competition Commission says there's this school uniform that's been there for years, even before I was born. So when you're looking at local manufacturing, and I speak to the converted here, is that local manufacturing, what it does is that it creates jobs. It supports manufacturing jobs, logistics, packaging, technology development, which is what we need at the moment, and critically so. So education procurement should therefore not be seen as an economic development tool. And sorry, it should be seen as an economic development tool and not just a purchasing exercise, because you feel that people are just purchasing things, but they don't see the bigger goal, which is the economic development that we are trying to build, especially as small businesses coming up. Okay. Open procurement obviously encourages innovation. I mean, I started with a calculator back in 2021 already, building one of the biggest online platform, helping a lot of learners in the country. I wouldn't have done that had I not started there. So the innovation, therefore also, you are able to also replicate it within the ecosystem and be able to, to create jobs as you go along. I now have so many tutors who wouldn't be working, and they are on my platform. And we are helping a lot of learners across the country that we wouldn't be able to have been able to tap into had I not started with this calculator. So we are saying procurement should be open and performance-based rather than brand-based. And this, I dare say, it will help in improving the innovation in the education technology space. Okay. The other thing that I think we tend to forget when speaking about education is technology. Technology is the next frontier of localization. That's what I think. We need to start thinking about the whole technology ecosystem in education. How are we positioning it? How much are we building locally so that eventually we are not going to be importing the whole future of learning in the future, because we know the future of learning is going online. So when it comes to learning apps, what are we doing? When it comes to digital content development, what are we doing? When it comes to building our educational tablets that we so desperately need today, what are we doing? AI learning systems in education, what are we doing? So smart assessment tools, even today, there's very little of those. What are we doing? So we must not just focus on the other side. I feel this is another area that may potentially have another monopoly if we don't capture it at the moment where we are. So the real goal has always been learner success. And in order for us to achieve learner success, we have to centralize, to make sure that localization is open up. Because what will that do? It will reduce the cost for parents. It will improve access for learning tools, which is the vision for Geleza. It will support school, South African businesses. It will improve education outcomes. You can imagine if we were sitting with learners who could afford calculators wherever they are, our calculator being retailing at 150 and other calculators retailing at 300 or more that people prescribe or principal prescribe, then you can already see we are putting a tool in the learner's hand that can potentially change their future, especially around STEM careers. Okay, my closing message is that local procurement in education is not only about buying South African products. It is about building a system where every learner can access affordable tools to succeed, while the country simultaneously builds in the industries, creates jobs, and foster innovation. I'm not going to share that. I think I shared that very well as I was presenting. I'm going to end my presentation here, and thank you so much to the Proudly South African team for inviting me. It's quite an honor, and I'm very happy to be a member. I look forward to many, many things that we could be potentially do together in the future. Thank you, everyone, for your time.
Thank you so much, sir. Great to get the insight from you on your incredible innovation. A calculator is absolutely necessary for school-going children. And it's so heartwarming to know that one of our own, a local, came up with the innovation. Thank you, a local version calculator, which is great, great, great. And so last night we were at the media launch of the Buy Local Summit and Expo happening on the 16th and 17th of March, which is next week. I'm hoping you are part of the exhibition, sir, to showcase your manufacturing brilliance. Are you at the expo next week?
I am not. Please plug me in.
Oh, you must have missed all the communication around it. But anyway, we will have it offline. Don't worry. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody, there you go from Mr. Mutupi Kopa, who has shared valuable information with us around his calculator manufacturing, his innovation to make the difference we would all like to see in that space, and for our children to have access to an affordable, world-class functioning calculator. Because local is lekemos, ne? This is what we mean. This is a true example of what we mean. Thank you so much. And then last but not least in our program is our next speaker, who is from Ibele Communication, Mr. Mbuyiseni Ndlalose, another proud member of Proudly South African. I'm aware that you've been struggling with the connectivity. I'm hoping that all is well now. Mbuyiseni, Mr. Ndlalose, please go for it. Do we have Mr. Ndlalose on the line? Yes, okay, he is on the line. Please unmute, sir, and do your presentation. Mbuyiseni, are you struggling? I can see you online, but you are muted. All right, colleagues, I think Mr. Mbuyiseni has a connectivity problem. We're going to have to move on because I'm not too sure. He's okay. I just got a message from the team that says that he's struggling to speak due to technical issues. We're going to have to move on. It's such a pity because we were looking forward to hearing the testimony of local manufacturing from one of our member companies, sorry, Mbuyiseni Ndlalose, who is out there, and he was driving earlier on, and there's major connectivity issues. We apologize profusely for that. I see there's no other questions on the chat box. So with that said, I'm going to take this opportunity to thank all of you who joined in this morning to be part of this discussion, to come in here, the opportunities, the issues around local manufacturing and procurement for school uniform, for our learners in the country, whether from private schools or public schools, the challenges are more or less the same. I would like to take this opportunity to thank Janine Franz Stratton, who is my colleague at Proudly SA, the Executive Manager, Strategy, Stakeholder Relations and Legal. And thank you so much, Ginny. And also say thank you to Mr. James Ndlebe from the Department of Basic Education, who is a Chief Director, Planning and Implementation Support. We also had Ms. Karabo Mudaung Muhlala from the Competition Commission. She is the Principal Analyst, Advocacy Division. And then we also heard from Mr. Mutupi Kopa, a Proudly SA member, a calculator, a local calculator manufacturer from Geleza Tech, which is a proudly South African company. And it is a great pity that we couldn't hear from Mbuyiseni Mdlalose, who is another Proudly SA member, manufacturer of educational board games from Ibele Communications. Thank you so much to our speakers, and thank you to the attendees, either on this official platform or on social media platforms. Thank you. Have a great Friday and a splendid weekend. Thank you from all of us at Proudly South African.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Well,
Hello. Hello. Hello.